Commander Zethkar flexed his forearms as he studied the holographic display floating above the war table. The crimson dots representing enemy positions clustered around the mining station like blood cells around a wound. His tactical officers, a mix of Velkari, Thraxians, and other coalition species, chittered and clicked their analyses in the familiar cacophony of a pre-battle briefing. "The Ravagers have fortified positions here, here, and here," Sub-Commander Yixtal indicated with his plasma pointer. "Standard assault tactics suggest a three-pronged attack. We overwhelm their eastern flank while their anti-ship batteries will shred our fighters," interrupted Lieutenant Grull, her mandibles clicking rapidly. "We need to neutralize their orbital defenses first. A bombardment from the heavy cruisers should—" "Negative," Zethkar rumbled. "Civilian casualties would be unacceptable. The mining station houses over 3,000 non-combatants." The debate continued, voices rising as each officer proposed increasingly complex strategies. Flanking maneuvers, cyber warfare, siege tactics, all met with counter-arguments and complications. The Ravagers had chosen their position well, turning the mining station into a fortress that seemed impregnable without massive casualties. Through it all, one figure remained motionless. Captain Marcus Chen sat at the far end of the table, his pale hands folded before him, dark eyes fixed on the hologram. He hadn't spoken since the briefing began 40 minutes ago. Hadn't even shifted in his seat. The human stillness was unnerving in a way that made Zethkar's primary stomach churn with unease. Humans were never quiet during tactical discussions. They interrupted, they questioned, they argued with a passion that bordered on madness. Chen himself had once spent an entire hour debating the merits of a single supply route, gesticulating wildly as he explained concepts like Murphy's Law and the fog of war. Their minds worked differently, chaotically, unpredictably, brilliantly. But silence from a human? That was terrifying. "Sir?" Yixtal's voice cut through Zethkar's thoughts. "Your decision?" Zethkar's gaze swept across his officers, noting their expectant expressions before settling on the motionless human. "Captain Chen," he said slowly, "you've been unusually quiet. Do you have thoughts on our tactical situation?" Chen's head lifted slightly, and for a moment Zethkar saw something in those dark eyes that made his scales ripple with ancestral fear. It was the same look he'd witnessed once before, during the Battle of Kepler Station, when Chen had suggested using their own ship as a battering ram to break enemy lines. "Permission to speak freely, sir." "Granted." Chen stood, his movement fluid despite the apparent calm. "With respect to my colleague's excellent analyses," he began, his voice carrying that deceptively mild tone that Zethkar had learned to dread. "You're all thinking like civilized beings." The table fell silent. Grau's mandibles stopped clicking. Yixtal's fins flattened against his skull. "The Ravagers aren't civilized," Chen continued, walking slowly around the table. "They're raiders, scavengers, opportunists. They took this station not because it's strategically valuable, but because it was easy prey. And right now they're counting on us to play by civilized rules." "What are you suggesting?" Zethkar asked, though he wasn't certain he wanted to know. Chen's smile was thin, predatory. "I'm suggesting we don't." He gestured to the hologram, and the display shifted at his command. "Look at their positioning again. See how they've clustered around the high-value targets? The command center, the communication hub, the main reactor. They're protecting what they think we want to preserve. Because those are critical systems," Yixtal protested. Without them, the station becomes worthless to the Ravagers too." Chen's fingers danced over the controls, highlighting new sections of the station. "But there's something they're not protecting. Something they don't think we'd be crazy enough to target." The hologram zoomed in on what appeared to be a minor maintenance section: waste processing, atmospheric recycling, water reclamation, essential but unglamorous systems that kept the station habitable. "You want to attack their sewage?" Grau's voice pitched higher with disbelief. "I want to make their fortress uninhabitable," Chen corrected. "Not destroy it, not damage the critical systems we need intact, but make it impossible for them to stay there. Humans call it biological warfare, but in this case it's more like environmental warfare." Zethkar's eyes widened as he began to understand. "You're talking about poisoning their air supply." "Not poisoning, adjusting." Chen's smile widened. "The Ravagers are methane breathers, right? Their entire respiratory system is built around processing methane-rich atmospheres. But humans discovered something interesting about methane breathers during first contact protocols. The human pulled up chemical formulas that made Zethkar's head spin, introduced trace amounts of hydrogen sulfide into their atmosphere. Not enough to kill the hostages who are oxygen breathers, but enough to make it unbreathable for ravagers. They'll have maybe 6 hours in breathing masks before they're forced to evacuate or suffocate. That's, Yixtal began, then stopped. Insane? Chen supplied helpfully. Unconventional? Brilliant? All of the above? It could work, Growl admitted reluctantly. Their masks would run out of power eventually. But the risk to civilians is minimal. Hydrogen sulfide is actually easier on human and Velkari respiratory systems than pure oxygen. Uncomfortable but not lethal in small doses. And we can clear it from the atmosphere within hours of retaking the station. Zethkar stared at the human, remembering why Coalition Command both valued and feared the human contingent. Other species strategized within the bounds of conventional warfare, seeking victory through superior firepower or tactical brilliance. Humans won by thinking outside the boundaries of what was considered possible or sane. How do we deliver the compound? He asked finally. Chen's grin was answer enough. Leave that to me, sir. I just need a maintenance pod, a basic chemistry set, and maybe 30 minutes of everyone looking the other way. 3 hours later, distress signals began emanating from the mining station. The Ravagers were abandoning their positions, streaming toward their ships in chaotic retreat, their communications filled with references to toxic atmosphere and biochemical attack. The station was retaken without firing a single shot. As they watched the last Ravager vessel disappear into hyperspace, Zethkar turned to his human officer. Captain Chen, remind me never to make you angry. Chen chuckled, that deceptively mild expression returning to his features. Sir, if I were angry, they wouldn't have been given the option to retreat. Zethkar decided he didn't want to know what that meant. Some human thoughts were better left unexplored.